Hello and welcome everybody to this little workshop on how to understand A-level exam tasks better and the types of texts you're confronted with. I think everybody of you knows this little situation here. You're sitting in front of the exam, you get the exam papers and you basically have no idea what to do. Because you cannot understand the tasks correctly and you have the impression that, oh my gosh, the text is too complicated for me to understand. What I want you to learn in that little video clip here is what to do with an unknown text. I want to talk about the identification of different types of texts in that video clip. After that, I come to the aspect of how to give the text a first chance, not to lose motivation. And I want you to understand tasks better. So first, we want to talk about the identification of different types of texts. As well as in German, we divide between non-fictional and fictional texts. Non-fictional texts are basically informing the reader about real events, about real facts, real people, and real incidents. So what they are doing is to talk and picture reality. In contrast to that, fictional texts are talking about an invented world, a literary world, and the author invites you to his or her literary world, and the events depicted are unrealistic. Non-fictional texts are divided into different types of texts. We talk about newspaper articles, reports, interviews, letters, comments, blog entries, speeches, if we talk about non-fictional texts. So basically, they are also called argumentative texts because most of the time you find arguments in their types of texts. If we talk about fictional texts more in detail, we come to three different categories. The first category is the narration. We're talking about novel extracts and short stories. So basically invented stories. We find invented stories as well in dramas and plays and in poetry. So dramas and plays are divided into two different other categories, the comedy and the tragedy. While the comedy always has a happy ending, the tragedy has not. If we have a look and a closer look at poetry, we find sonnets, poems, and songs belonging to that category. I want to give you the chance in that video clip to identify the types of texts. I would recommend to stop the video here because we are going from example to example and talk about it more in detail. So great. I think everybody could identify that this here is a speech. Why is it a speech? Because if you have a look at the first words of this little excerpt, you can identify that this must be a speaker talking to his audience because every good speaker wants to greet his audience. In this case, it's Barack Obama speaking to the American society. The second example is a novel extract. Why is it a novel extract? If you have a closer look at it, everything is really described in detail. And direct speech is implemented within the narration. Third example is an extract by the famous playwright Shakespeare. It's an excerpt from the drama Romeo and Juliet. And how can you identify drama? You can identify drama with the help of the dialogue structure. Why? Because it is basically written for performance. So to perform it in the theater. You can also identify a drama with the help of stage directions implemented within the dialogue structure. I think everybody of you could identify this example here. It's a newspaper article because every good newspaper article has his own headline. Finally, this here is poetry. It's a sonnet. It's the famous Sonnet 18 by Shakespeare. How can you identify a sonnet or other types of poetry? Most of the time it's written in rhyme structure, rhyme form. My second part would be that I want to give you a little advice on how to give the text a first chance. I want to talk about non-fictional and fictional texts here because you can basically get closer to the text with the help of basic advice. Never forget for non-fictional texts to read the headline closely because the author's opinion is most of the time in there. Before you start reading the whole text, just give yourselves the chance to get a first impression. How can you get yourselves a first impression? With the help of the first and the last paragraph of the text, because most of the time, with the help of the headline, you can identify the author's opinion better. For fictional texts, especially if you talk about novel extracts and short stories, you can have a closer look at atmosphere, characters, and narrative perspective. If you have a drama, you can have a look at stage directions, the development of the conflicts within the story, or the character constellation. And basically, for every type of text, you can focus on stylistic devices and the overall structure. But this is for an upcoming video on analysis of texts. So what I basically want you to understand is not to lose motivation, but to scan the text first and give yourselves a first impression. Understanding the task is one of the basic skills. And I want to give you some advice here and recommendations how to give yourselves a chance to understand the tasks better. First of all, you should understand the operator. The operator is, so to speak, the first word for every task. If you have no idea what that is, just scan the QR code and you will be directly guided to a PDF document. In every single exam, you find 3 to 4 tasks. As you know, your exam is divided into part 1 and part 2, the mediation and the text at hand. For the text at hand, you always have 3 to 4 tasks. What kind of tasks? Comprehensive task is your first one, an analytic task, your second one, and finally you can write a comment, or you have a creative writing task. These 3 tasks are connected. How are they connected? We want to find out with the help of a little example. In this case, it's an example from a non-fictional text. Imagine that you get a newspaper article dealing with the topic of the Brexit. The first task here would be point out the author's opinion on the consequences of Brexit, analyze the author's opinion, focusing on argumentative strategies and language would be the second one, and the third one, comment on the author's opinion, focus on the text at hand and work done in class. What you have to understand is that in every single task you find the author's opinion. This is your primary focus of the task, of each task. So you have a clear focus. There are also subordinate focuses in every single task. What are the subordinate focuses? In the first one, it's the consequences of the Brexit. To translate the first task for you, it basically means that you should summarize the author's opinion with the help of the consequences of the Brexit he mentions. In the second task, you find the argumentative strategies and language. These are the subordinate focuses of your analytic task. For the third task, you have the text at hand, because after understanding the text with the help of task number 1 and task number 2, you can basically evaluate the text as well and give your opinion on the author's opinion and implement everything you know from the work done in class. I brought you another example here. We want to talk about this example as well, and I want to give you the chance to stop the video here and just check yourselves if you understood the basic concept and if you can find out the primary focus, the subordinate focus. So great. I think you could all understand that his situation, that in this case, John's situation, is the primary focus of the task. The subordinate focuses are, in the first task, emotions and dreams, his emotions and dreams. You might have recognized that emotions and dreams cannot be just summarized, but the lines between the AFB 1 and 2, so to speak, between the summary and the analysis, are blurred in that case, because sometimes you have to read his emotions and dreams between the lines. So what you basically have to do in the first task is to summarize the situation presented in this extract, as well as his emotions and dreams in this exact situation. In the second task, you have the focus on atmosphere and narrative perspective. With the help of the atmosphere and the narrative perspective, you can understand the situation presented better. And finally, with the help of task number 1 and 2, you can really comment on that situation because you understood it profoundly. Here, you should focus again on his dreams and emotions. It seems to be the most important part of this extract. And the work done in class as well. So finally, I want to give you a little advice here. First of all, the task will always help you to understand the overall concept of the exam better. Second, the tasks always have a specific focus. Never forget that the focus is most of the time also the most important aspect of this little excerpt you're dealing with. I would recommend to mark the primary and the subordinate focuses of each task in different colors so that you don't lose track while writing. And please give yourself some time and calm down, because you first of all have to scan the text and get yourselves a first impression. Remember, with the help of the first and the last paragraph. Thank you very much for your attention, and never forget that nobody is perfect. And I wish you the best of luck for your upcoming exam. See you soon.